afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. My name is Julianne Manning, and I am the product specialist here at Saran. And we also have Sherry. You want to introduce yourself?
How are you, Julianne?
Doing well, doing well.
My name is Sherry Snedden, and I'm the support manager here at CDM Plus.
All right. Well, we're joined by several people today, members of our Saran team. We also have Alex Clay, who's our CEO, and Jennifer Nelson. She's our support engineer, and they will be handling questions that come in through the chat. We have Chris Widener, our marketing specialist, who is helping moderate the webinar. And we have Eli Turner, our sales specialist, who will be able to answer any questions you have about adding different programs to your plan. Our webinar today is a part of our Discover webinar series, and you can view all of our upcoming webinars at our website, www.cdmplus.com/discover2024. This, along with all of our past and future webinars, will be available on our YouTube channel, which we do encourage you to follow to stay up to date on the latest offerings. And it's also where you can access many how-to videos on CDM Plus. Now, Sherry, we can see from your surroundings that you are a very organized person. But for some of us, when we think of spring and we start opening up our windows and that sunlight starts shining in on all of our dust, we know we might need to do some deep cleaning. But for you, maybe not the case. So
Well, you're right. I do like to keep my craft room very organized, but I also like to keep my database organized. Of course, we've titled this Spring Cleaning, but we're going to talk about how doing it along the way will definitely lighten your load. We've all heard that saying about garbage in and garbage out, right? Well, we want to make sure that we keep that to a minimum if we can. You may have inherited a database with maybe some things that you would like to do differently, or maybe you actually have some new ideas.
exactly. So the nice thing about the things that we're going to show you today isn't so much about, you have to do it at a specific time of year, but these are things that you can do kind of gradually whenever you have a few moments, if those ever exist. But these are simple tricks for you to really be able to kind of take in and manage your data that way. Like, you're going to talk to us about archiving today. Is there a specific time when that would be a good idea to do that?
Well, you mentioned when you have a few minutes. Well, I'm like you, I don't have any minutes, right? So, what we have to do is we just have to choose what works for our workflow. We have to make sure that we've considered the things that affect our organization, the time of year, whether you want to close your year first, resources. Do you have people to help you with what you need to do? And all of that, of course, are internal decisions you want to make. But hopefully, after today, you won't feel like archiving is such a daunting task that we sometimes we put off those things that we're like, oh, that's going to be a big project. I'm just going to wait a minute. And so hopefully, we'll be able to make that a little less troubling.
Yes, a little less daunting for sure. Um, Well, perfect. Well, I do want to mention that the features that we are highlighting today are available on our standard CDM Plus packages, although the merging feature we're going to show is available on Essentials as well. So for any Essentials users who are with us today, if you do want to know more about how to utilize some of these other tips and tricks, make sure to reach out to Eli. He can definitely answer any questions that you might have about some of your options that you may have. Today we're going to be highlighting what it means to archive, how to use those maintenance lists. We're going to talk about merging records in one of my new favorite tools, the grid tool, or at least that I've discovered, newly discovered. But this is really just the iceberg of the different ways that you can really manage your data. And Sherry and I are going to show you some specific use cases, but these are tools that you can use for your use case. So just want to kind of make mention, we're going to provide a couple of examples, but these tools can be used in multiple different ways that really affect you and how you use the data. And if you want to be able to see all of the features CDM Plus has to offer, I would encourage you to check out and sign up
Yeah.
for our annual user conference this September. Sherry, what's one of your favorite things about the annual user conference?
I love meeting the people. I love meeting the users. I know we're supposed to say something official like, oh, I love all the classes and all the teaching, but I love meeting the people, putting faces to names that we talk to people every day. And you're going to learn a lot.
It's definitely a great time to kind of take a deep dive into how CDM Plus. Our entire staff is there, not only to teach the workshop, but to answer any questions that you may have about your specific database. And it's also just a great time, as Sherry said, to get to know those other uses, kind of put faces to name. I know you've talked to Sherry and her team on the phone, but now you can really see them in live in person, but you also can see our developers, our customer support team. Everyone is there for you. And we are running an early bird special. So it's definitely something you want to take advantage. We run the early bird special through July. So, and we also have some exciting giveaways that if you sign up earlier, you can put your name in a drawing from some exciting giveaways coming up at the conference as well. So definitely a great time in September. Make sure you check it out. But without further ado, Sherry, why don't you kind of take us into the world of archiving and show us how easy it is?
All right. I'm going to take myself off of camera here. Just, you've seen enough of me. We're going to go into CDM Plus. We're going to go into File, which is where our utilities live, right? For CDM. So lots of our utility programs are going to be under File, and archiving is no exception. But before we do that, see, immediately we want to, oh, let's just go archive, but we have to prep our database. So we're going to use as a use case in this instance, we're going to talk about membership. So at what point do you, the pastor, do your board, do you want to say, let's look at our membership, let's see who maybe isn't attending any longer, maybe who has moved their membership, and therefore we want to prep them and get them ready to archive. So if we go to membership and we go to address records, and we're going to just pull up all of our records. Now, depending on your database, it might take a minute for it to load, but I'm going to, for what we're doing, I'm going to load it all, right? Because I want to see everything we have. So you can work this list any way you want to. Maybe you print a list of all of your records, all of your members that are in CDM in your database currently, or you can do it visually, whatever works again for you. But maybe you've worked your list, and so okay, I want to take Derek and Lucy. They moved away, they moved to another state, and so we want to prep them. We want to say, okay, we're going to archive them. Now, we recommend that you use the mailing code, which, as if you'll look at the bottom right, you'll see here there's a mailing code. And that's what we recommend that you use to be able to identify that this record is ready to archive. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on Derek. We're going to double click Derek and Lucy, and that's going to automatically take us into the record so that we can change it. We'll click the drop down, and we want to ready to archive. You see, we already have this in here, ready to archive, right there. Now, if you didn't have ready to archive, or if you wanted to give it a different name, then what you can do is you would just type it right in here, and it's going to come up. It'll pop up and say, it doesn't exist. Would you like to add it? And you just say yes, and then it'll add it to your list, and it'll be there for the next one that you go to do. But in this case, we're just going to ready to archive this record, and we're going to click save. Now that's it. So they're prepped. They're ready for us to archive when we want to. And you can work this project over, you can say, oh, I'm going to do my archive, I'm going to get my list done today, or you can do it over a course of several days, whatever works for your workflow. Let's say that Pastor Williams, he moved, he went to a different church. And so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to double click. We're going to hit our drop down beside a mail code, and we're going to say ready to archive. And now he's ready. And that's really the extent of prepping your database. So once you get your list done, then you're going to go where we talked about early on. We're going to go up to the file where the actual archive utility is. We're going to go to archive. We're going to say archive here. Now, you'll see there's also a restore button. So this gives us some confidence that if you accidentally archive someone, so don't let this fret you, don't let it stress you out, because if you accidentally archive someone, we can get it back, right? Because we can restore it. But we're going to just click on archive. Now, if this is the first time that you're archiving, then you won't have a database in here, and you would just click create a new database. And I'll just show you, it's going to pop up. It's going to give you, you're going to put the name in here and you're going to click OK, and it's going to create a database. It's that easy. But we have one for the sake of this webinar. So we're just going to click webinar archive and we're going to say OK. And then it's going to pull up multiple ways that we could, not only multiple records that we could archive, but also we can do it through an advanced find. You see on the left, you can see all of the options, all of the things that we could archive. What we're going to do is again, remember, we went into membership address records, but here's a trick. Some folks may think that, oh, wait a minute, I want to take everything in my address record, my individual records, and my giving units. I want to take all that. Well, if you just select address, it's going to automatically take anything that's linked to that, which means the individual record and the giving unit. Okay, so you don't have to do them individually. So super easy. All right, so we're going to click that. Well, you know, our first option here is archive all records. Well, we probably don't want that, right? So what we're going to do is we want to do an archive based on an advanced find. We're going to click that. This works the same as everywhere else in the system, right? So we're going to come here. Now, you can see I already have this selected, but again, this works the same as anywhere else in the system. You're just set up your advanced find. Now we're going to use mailing code because that's how we prepped our database. If you choose to do it a different way, then whatever way you choose, if you used a group or something like that, then that's just how you're going to go in and identify. But we used mailing code. We want equal to and ready to archive. Now, if we clicked this drop down, do you see how it gives us all of those options that are in the drop down when we selected ready to archive? So if for some reason you wanted to call them something else instead of just ready to archive, maybe it was ready to archive out of town, ready to archive, you know, whatever you wanted to do, you could select more than one. But again, in our case, we're just going to select ready to archive. We're going to say OK. And then we're going to say OK. All right. It doesn't really look like anything happened. So how do we know, right? Well, up here, this is so key. You see there's an options tab. Well, there's a preview tab. We click on preview. And this shows me the two records that I've selected because that was the only two records that I prepped that's ready for archive. But let's say that I look at this and I go, oh, goodness, I did not mean to do Pastor Williams. What was I thinking? All I have to do to prevent, even though I've already said ready to archive, I don't have to stop what I'm doing, go back out, change his record, and come back. All that I need to do is just double click. And now do you see how he's got a red X? So that means it's not going to archive him. So all that I'm going to do here, but now I'm going to archive both of these. So I'm going to double click it again. And that brings it back to ready, back to green. And then all I'm going to do at this point is say, okay. It's telling me I'm archiving address records. I'm going to, oh, you know what? Let me tell you one thing. I'm going to cancel this. I want to tell you one thing down here at the bottom, on the bottom left. You see how there are three options: standard, archive, copy, and delete. But it's going to automatically default to standard archive. So when you come in, if you just want a normal archive, you won't even have to touch this. But if for some reason you wanted something different, these two options, copy only and delete only, are going to do exactly that. If you wanted to copy what copy it and put it into a different database, that's what it's going to do. It's going to leave it in your existing operating database, but then it's going to create a copy of it and put it in the new database that you created, or it'll delete them. Okay, so that's those two are things. But again, it defaults to standard, and that's what you're going to use probably 99% of the time. All right, so we're going to say okay. Now we'll say address. That's correct. Now, this is another tip I want to give you. This is going to ask you if you want to do a backup. It's going to ask you if it's going to tell you it's highly recommended. Here, when it asks you, you don't have to do a backup. You actually, if you're hosted, we back up for you. The only thing that we would recommend is do it in the morning earlier. Don't wait till 4 o'clock and do it. You've worked all day. Now something goes a little bit wonky, and now you need to get a restore. Well, now your whole day of work that you've done all day, now you got to rekey it. Now, sometimes that's not a big deal, but other times it could be. So we just recommend do this earlier in the morning so that if something were to go wonky, you won't have a lot to rekey. All right, so we're going to say no, we don't want to back up. And it's going to just do this thinking for just a couple minutes. And again, while we're waiting for this, I'm going to mention the user conference again. If you've never been, I encourage you to come. It's a great, not only do we get to spend some time with each other, with each, you get to network a bit with other users, and we get to meet you, but we have goodness, we have so many classes. You will learn so much. I say I learn something every day. Every day I learn something new. So there's so much to learn, and I think that you would love it. You'll be glad that you came. So really, I hope you consider it. I'd love to see you there. All right. So we're almost done with the archive, and there we go. It's done. When I click OK, it's going to take me off of this screen, and it's going to bring me back to membership. And that's it. That's the extent of archiving. It's really, don't let it stress you out. I think you'll find it's a good feature. It's a good way to keep your database so that what you're seeing is current. Don't do it too often, though. Now, because you don't want to archive people out and then have to restore them, because that's just a little extra work for you. So I would set a good time period and then archive based on that. But now that we've gone through archiving, I want to talk about lists at maintenance windows. We have lots of different maintenance windows: list maintenance, email maintenance. We have phone maintenance. We have lots of, you can see here, if we go to membership, you see we've got field, list, phone, email maintenance, user field maintenance, and all of these were created to help with larger projects. They were created so that you can make light work of big projects, right? Because man, there's nothing that makes you want to procrastinate more than somebody says, hey, could you go in and take a look at these 1,200 people and make this change to them? And you're like, well, I could, but I don't really want to, right? So this will help you make that a little bit easier. But for the sake of our demo today, we're going to focus on list maintenance, and we're going to use the same example. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go and we're going to go into program, membership, list maintenance, under address. Now, one more thing that I should mention, you have these available to you for individual records. So if you were let's say another use case would be if you were graduating your Sunday school classes, then you could use this option to graduate your classes. You also have this available under giving units. So there's lots of options to help you keep your database good and clean. So, but for today, we're going to do membership, and we're going to go to list maintenance, and we're going to use the same concept. And that is, we want to archive. Now, I wanted to show you the old school way, right? Because some folks like to do it that way. They just want to go look at each record. They want to make sure that before they mark it ready to archive, that they've taken a look at extra information to be sure. But if you have your list, it's all ready, and you know, I'm going to archive this one, this one, this one, and you've got your list and you've scrubbed that list, then what you could do is this super easy. Come into address list maintenance. We're going to say show all. Now, here's all of the folks in our database, right? So now I'm going to come over to the right. You see where it says code type? I'm going to select mailing code. And under code, I'm going to select now, because I have ready to archive already in there, I'm going to select ready to archive. Now I can move this over several different ways, right? So all I have to do, a couple ways that we can do this is we can, at the bottom, you see, we can see transfer selected. I'm going to click on that. That will bring it over. If I wanted to bring over Janie Austin, I can double click Janie. That'll bring her over. I could also bring Matt and Ashley by dragging them over. So far I can click transfer selected, I can drag, and I can double click to get them over here. So whatever works, whatever you like best, but even better. So let's say, for instance, let's say you had a family. I don't really have here we go. I've got a few hat makers, but let's say I wanted to take all of these hat makers and archive them. So if I click the first one and I click shift, that'll grab them all and I drag them over. Now I have 4 of them. Now let's say I wanted to go down my list and say, okay, I want Emerson, and I'm going to click Command on a Mac and Control on a Windows machine. So I'm going to say, okay, Command, I want Jim Fox, I want Terry and Amy, and I want Mark and Andrea. And then once I have those selected, I can drag those over, and now I have those 4. So there's so many ways to get the information over. This is definitely the fastest way if you've already scrubbed your list and you don't need to look at additional data. Once you have all of the ones that you want to mark, now what's happening with them is all of the folks in this window are going to, once we hit save, they're going to have a ready to archive selection under mailing codes in their address record. Now, if for some reason you said, oh, wait, I did not mean to bring Terry and Amy over, then you can do the same thing, right? If you double click it, it's going to say, are you sure you want to clear it? We're going to say yes, and it takes it away from our list. All right, but now let's say these are ready. I'm just going to say save. And it's going to do exactly what we just talked about. It's going to do all of this. We're going to close that. And actually, I'm going to go in here and click all again so that it'll refresh our information. And now if I click on Ava Adams, do you see that was one of the ones I selected. And you see down here on the right, she is now ready to archive. So you can do a list maintenance like that, get your database prepped super fast, and then you would follow the rest of the steps like we talked about earlier, which was archive, file, archive, and so forth. Okay, that's archiving and ways to prep your database. But don't forget, if you have another project where, again, like graduating classes, maybe you have email addresses, you've birthdays, you want to get all the birthdays in. There's several ways to do that. I think Julianne may even talk to you about that a little bit later as well. But if you're trying to change bulk information and you're like, hey, I wonder, just call support. And if we can actually help you and kind of instruct you as to the best tool to use if you don't already know that. So, all right. Well, that's all for me. And hopefully you'll be able to use these tips and it'll help you as you begin to spring clean your database. Julianne, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Sherry. I think I learn something new every time I watch, which is awesome. So I'm going to talk to you first about merging records. So within CDM Plus, there are a lot of safeguards in place to prevent multiple records for the same person to happen. So if you're adding an address record and you're entering in one that may already exist in the system, you'll see a little pop-up that says, hey, this looks like this matches this record. Are you sure you want to add? Can you continue with the add? So there are a lot of safeguards in place, but sometimes maybe there's a couple people working in the system, or you had a big event, so you took off process pending contributions off or donations off. So you have lots of new guest donors. Whatever it may be, there are times when you need to merge records together. And the first thing to think about when you're merging records is you always want to start from the giving unit record or the donor record and go up. So you do given unit record or donor record, and then you merge those together. And then you work on the individual record that's tied to that given unit record, merge those together, and then you go in and you clean up your address records. So that's what we're going to kind of start here today. So from my program menu, I'm going to click on program. I'm going to go to contributions, and I'm going to go to given unit records. Here in my results list, I have everyone listed here. Now, one really easy way to kind of see duplicate records is if I click on my given unit last name, it's going to filter my column alphabetically. So I can really easily see, as I scroll through any duplicate records I may have. You can also set up a find as well if there's a specific record you're looking for, but sometimes just by sorting by that last name is very helpful. Here you can see I've got a couple of records for Janie Austin. So in order to merge these together, I'm going to click to highlight the first record I want to merge. And then on a Mac, I'm going to click Command on my keyboard, or if you're on a Windows, you're going to click Control, and you're going to select the other records that you want to merge together here as well. And when you do, when you have more than one records highlighted, you're going to see this merge option appear from this left sidebar. So we simply click Merge. And we see the different records that we can merge together. You're going to drag the one over that you want to kind of keep. So maybe it's the first record that you have or the most recent record, whatever your preference may be. You click to highlight the one you want to kind of merge everything under, and you're going to drag it to the center here. And then you simply click on Next in the next window. Now on this screen, you can customize what you'd want that final record to be. So maybe we wanted to update that giving code and we want it to be, 9 or 7, or maybe we want it to be, something completely different. You have that option to kind of edit that final record right here. And then you just click Next. This window is going to say, hey, we're going to put all of this information from these other records underneath the main record you selected. So it's just kind of telling you what's going to move over. And then we click on merge. It's going to double check, are you sure you want to proceed? And we're going to click on yes. Perfect. And then it just takes just a few seconds. And you're going to get these two records were successfully merged underneath the main record you selected. So perfect. So then you simply click on close here. And now we can see we only have one Jenny Austin up here at the top. Now that we've merged all the given unit records together or the donor records together, we need to merge the individual records. So the first thing we want to do is go to the individual record that's now tied to this given unit record. So we simply click individual from the left sidebar. Now we want to distinguish that this individual record is the main record we want to keep, or the main record we're going to put everything else under. So what we're going to do is you can either double click this record to put it into change mode, or you can click change from that left-hand side menu. And we're going to what I like to do is I like to put K for keep. And that's just kind of the indicator to me that this is the record that we're going to merge everything under. But you can put a 1, you can put an asterisk, whatever you want to do to kind of tag this record so that you know this is the one you want to keep. So then we just simply click on Save. So now to find the other records we want to merge, we're going to set up a simple find by clicking Find from this left side bar menu. We're going to search by individual last name. I'm going to use the contains qualifier because again, that will pick up this K here. And then we put in our last name and click on Find. All right, so now we see all 3 of the records that we want to merge together. The biggest difference between merging individual records versus given unit records is you do need to clear out any of these records that have engaged credentials other than the main one you want to use. So in this case, we're going to click on the second record here. And under online credentials, we simply click clear. It's going to ask you, are you sure you want to clear these credentials? We're going to say yes. And then you'll see them be deleted. And then we're going to go to the other record that we want to merge and again do the same exact thing. So click to highlight that record under online credentials, click on clear and say, yes, we want to clear these credentials out. So now we're going to do just as we did with those given unit records. We're going to click to highlight the record we want to merge everything under, use our command or our control keys from our keyboard to select all of our records. And then we're going to click on merge from that left-hand side menu. We can now see our Janie with a K, the one we want to keep, and we're going to drag that record to the middle and click next. Since we don't necessarily need that K anymore in that final record, we can choose to edit that record here. So we know that the final record is just going to be Austin, and we're going to click next. And then we're going to choose to merge. Are you sure you want to proceed? We're going to say yes. And then we'll see all 3 of these individual records merge underneath that single account. All right, so we've merged all of our given unit records together, and then we merged all of the individual records that are tied to that given unit record. So the last but not least things we want to do is kind of clean up those address records. So that's the total triangle there. So we simply click address from the left sidebar. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and set up a find right away. So here under address record, if I click on find from the left sidebar, we're going to search by last name. Again, use that contains, and we're going to go with Austin and click on find. Now, the way to distinguish which record we want to keep for the address record is I can see this top record here. I can see individual and given unit records tied to this address record. But if I click on the second record, if I look on that left sidebar, I don't see an individual or a given unit record. So I know that there's nothing that's tied to that individual, there's nothing tied to this address record. The same as when I click on that third address record down, there's nothing in the sidebar. So the only address record that has any affiliated records tied to it is that top one. And again, we can see that by clicking on that top address record and seeing individual and given unit over here. So because we've clicked through these other records and know that we just need that top one, instead of merging address records, we can simply delete the ones we don't need. So in the same way, we can click to highlight and then use the command or control key on our keyboards to select the other record we don't need, and then click delete from this left sidebar. It's going to ask us again, are you sure you want to delete this record and all related records? We're going to say yes. And then it goes through the deleting process. All right, and then it's going to ask you, the deletion's complete. Do you want to restore these records? So it kind of gives you that opportunity to kind of back out if need be. But in this case, we're going to simply click on close because we don't need to restore. And then this is just saying, again, are you sure you meant to delete those records? And we're going to say, yes, we did. So we're good to go. And now we just have a single record, address record that's tied to one individual record that's tied to one given unit record as well. So very good. So again, merging is definitely one of those things. It's a great way to keep your database clean, and it's a great way to kind of do as needed to kind of keep things concise throughout the year. All right, so let's talk about another feature that's one of my favorite maintenance tips and tricks, and this is the grid feature. One of the reasons why I like the grid feature is it allows you to see lots of bits of information, different data points, all at once. So instead of having to go to record by record and make changes, you can see all the information all at once and make the changes right then and there. This grid is available on several records. It's available on given unit records, individual records, a couple others, but today we're going to highlight the ones underneath the address record. So first thing I'm going to point out here is that anything that I have in my search results is going to be what pulls into my grid. So if I'm looking for everybody in my database, if I search on all, they're going to all populate in this grid section. If I just want to focus on a specific group of people, I can set up a find, and then those are the people that's going to come across in my grid section. So, and I'll show you that a little bit more here in a little bit. But for in this case, I want to kind of see all the information. So I have selected all, and if I click on grid, everybody's going to be kind of populated here. So first use case I want to talk about is just really quickly at a glance. This allows me to see what information do I have that is missing. So let's say I was entering in information, but I didn't quite have the Brown's full address information. So I had created that record and then thought to myself, I'll fill in the missing data later. Here's a really easy way for me to see just any holes that need to be updated. So if I wanted to quickly fix those holes, I just click to highlight that cell so it turns yellow. And then when I double click, I can go and edit it, and then I can enter in the missing information. In the same way with the devices, if I click to highlight the cell and double click, I can enter in the correct information. And we'll do one more with the Bates. Again, just click to highlight the cell and double click. And then we can put in the correct address. So again, very, very quickly, don't have to go back and forth through records. I can make those changes and then click on save. So very helpful in regards to seeing any holes that you need. All right, so we save those changes. And so all those changes will now update those records. Again, if I click on grid on the left-hand sidebar, let's say you just send out a message to your entire organization because you want to make sure you have the correct address information on file. So you're just kind of doing that big deep dive, and now you have a stack of addresses you want to update in your system. And again, instead of having to go through this record by record, I can see all the names here. And to make this really easy, if I click to highlight the column, and then on the left-hand sidebar, click sorts, I'm going to choose to sort this by last name. This is going to put everybody in alphabetical order. So as I need to go through here and say, yep, okay, their address is correct. Oh, wait, nope, I have a new address for them. I can just go through this list one by one and make any necessary changes. So again, if you're doing a big kind of like a double check, make sure you have all the right information on file. This is a great way just to kind of go line by line really, really easily. Another feature that I really like about the grid is the ability to update and format things the same way with a couple clicks of the button. And what I mean by that is if you're like me, sometimes I might enter in an ampersand when entering in names. And sometimes I might enter in the word and. Or maybe you have two different people who are entering in information two different ways. But it's always nice to be consistent and to make sure that everything is formatted correctly. So a really easy way to change this is through our find and replace tool. So here, if I click to highlight the column that I want to apply this to, and I click on find and replace, if I, let's say I want to replace all the ampersands with the word and. So I'm going to search for the ampersands, and then we're going to replace it with the and. I have put some spaces before and after the words just so that I make sure that the spacing is correct when we replace this. And if we click on find all, I can see all of those green areas. Those are what we're going to replace with the word and. So again, you can quickly scan all those green highlights just to make sure, yep, those are the ones we want to replace. And then with the click of the button, I can replace all those ampersands, and now that word and is there. So a couple of clicks and I've just made sure all of my data is formatted correctly very, very easily. Again, we can do this with the mailing name. So I click to highlight the column. I first click on find first so I can, or find all, so I can see all of the places that are going to be changed. And I click on replace all. And now that's all been updated. So all of the names are formatted correctly. So one of my favorite ways to use this grid tool, that's for sure. And you can make all those changes at once. And then when you're kind of done making all of those changes, you can simply click on save. And then all of those changes will then apply to that specific address record. Um, Now, another way to, and kind of the last use case that I'm going to talk about here today is, let's say you want to kind of change information for a specific group of people. So the example I'm going to use is, let's say you just had a bunch of kids leave for college, but you still want to make sure that they're going to get the newsletter so that they can kind of stay up to date with things that are going on with your organization. I'm going to set up a find here, and we're going to set up a find where the mailing code is equal to college student address, and we'll click on find. So I can see all of my college students listed here. And now if I click on grid from the left sidebar, just the people who, again, were in my results list are going to be the ones that come into the grid here. And if I didn't have newsletter selected here, or if I needed another field that I wanted to kind of look at that information, if you click on this configure in the bottom left-hand corner, and this is the same way you can configure any of your record windows, you can kind of add the different fields that you want to see at a time. But in this case, if I look at the newsletter column, I can see, okay, yep, some people have selected yes, some people have selected no. I want all of these to be switched to yes. So I could go down here and just click on that column or click on that cell and double click and make that change. So I could do that to each and every one of them, which is fairly simple in and of itself. But even better, if I click to highlight that column, and then on this left-hand side bar, if I click on set contents and switch this from no to yes and click on OK, I can make it so those all switch all at once. And then again, I save those changes and then all those changes are applied. So that's just 4 different cases that you can use that grid tool for, but there's unlimited possibilities when it comes to the grid and how you can make sure you have consistent data and kind of see things all at once, all at a glance, and be able to make those changes line by line very easily. So that's the grid tool. Now, I mentioned previously that whatever is in your results list is what will appear in the grid list. So another kind of cool feature I like is, let's say I want to make sure that everybody who's in the college mailing code is still getting our newsletter. And so I want to make sure that they have that newsletter box checked on their record. So I'm going to set up a find, and we're going to search by mailing code. And we're going to do college student address, and we're going to click on find. So I've got all of my college students here. And now if I go to grid, I'm going to just see the same people that were in that results list there. So I know that those are just the students that I want to work with. It's just the information, the data I want to work with. But I can see that some people, yes, are getting the newsletter, but other people aren't. I could click into this cell and then click that yes box to change that each one individually. But a even better option is to use our set contents feature. So here, if I click on this column and I go to set contents, I want to make all of these yeses. I click on OK, and then immediately they're all yeses right then and there. So again, just a really easy way to kind of update that information just with a couple of clicks. Makes it really, really easy and streamlined there. So again, just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to how you can use the grid feature, how you can, work to merge your records together, how you can use those list maintenance options, which are great information, great informational pieces. And again, how you can archive to kind of make sure that the database that you're working with day in and day out is just with your active people that you need to be working with. So great options here. I do want to point out, we did mention our YouTube channel, which is a great resource, but our Help Center is a great resource as well. So there's walkthrough videos, there's step-by-step explanation of articles. If you are in our full CDM Plus standard version, you want to use the full CDM Plus Help Center. If you're our Essentials user, you want to use the Essentials support articles. Those are support articles that are geared specifically for you. But again, a great resource to kind of look into as you're kind of looking into some of these different options for your database here. All right. Are there any questions that we can look into here today?
Chris, I'm going to jump in. There was a question just came in about recommended names for archiving databases, and I think Jen's about to answer. And this kind of dovetails with another question that came in about, how many archive databases to create and so on. In general, you can create one per year. Some people do one per financial year to archive things like giving, ledger entries, attendance. And then maybe a separate one just for people that have moved out of the system. Frankly, it's your choice, but we tend to recommend one archive database. So that certainly would be, it kind of keeps things consistently connected. The one exception would be is if you're doing some major overhaul of something like a chart of accounts, because we always copy in sort of the current value of those whenever you archive. And that'd be a good question to talk to our support team about if you want to do some chart of accounts restructuring. But you can name it, name of your organization archive. You could write, people archive. You could do 2022 records, something like that. It's really up to you.
In CDM Plus, what is a newsletter?
Sure. I think it's just the indicator like these people are on like your newsletter list. So you know that they're the people who have signed up to receive your newsletter. So when you go to do your newsletter, you know that that's their target audience that you want to send your newsletter to. And you can use that feature through our notices. We do have a notice feature which allows you to kind of send those emails out. And Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can tailor that list to people who have signed up specifically for the newsletter, correct?
Correct. Yeah. The newsletter, and there's an adjacent checkbox for directory, reside on the address records themselves. And it's a little bit of focused on, say, an actual print and mail. So you're sending maybe one to physical address. So it's just a convenient checkbox you can use, but you can accomplish the same thing with a group.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Lori, did you have a question?
I do. You recommend keeping just one archive database. I would like some assurance that when I archive records from year to year, as a rolling process, I'm not overriding the archive database, that I'm adding to the archive database.
As long as you're archiving from the same source database every time, that will be the case. records are tracked with their internal ID. So what you couldn't do, for example, is to say, I have two different databases, maybe for a church and a school, for example, and archive those together. You would get some ID conflicts, but assuming everything's been coming out of the same database, they absolutely can coexist in the single archive.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
There you go.
personally, I only have access to a small portion of the tasks on CDM. I have access to addresses, labeling, membership, and do I need access to any other of the tiled programs in order to edit our list?
So if you have access to the archive utility, I'm 90% sure I would encourage you to check with support to verify. I believe that's available if you have the administrative access. So you essentially would have the ability to give yourself access to those other areas. So yeah, if you can get into the archive, then it'll work correctly to archive all the records that you can select in there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
There have been several questions on merging vendor records. And there is a way to merge vendor records. It's through our utilities window, and a support team member will be happy to kind of show you how to use that special function in the utilities window. It's just a simple call and they'd be happy to help you do that. So that was a question I got several times in there that I wanted to make sure to answer.
And then there was another question about merging archive databases. And this kind of goes back to that point of, if all the archives were created out of the same database, you technically can log into an archive database. We didn't show it today. When you log in, you can access it like a regular database, run reports and so on. And there's a big scary pop-up that shows up that says, don't do anything in here because you're in an archive. But you technically can actually archive from an archive database to another archive database. So you could create a common one and archive everything together. If you have been using CDM Plus for a very long time, or you think there might have been some differences in databases over the years, reach out to support so they can help double check. We had a client probably about 6 years ago that had no fewer than 48 archive databases, and we worked to help them merge those together. So that's certainly a possibility, just kind of depending where that data comes from.
There's a great question on here of, what if I archive somebody and they give after doing so? It does not search the archive database when you're doing a search. However, you can restore that particular giving unit record back to your main database if they give. I've had to do that personally a couple of times, but it does not, though, search your archive database when you do a search in a giving unit record.
And if they were to create a new record, they would get unique internal IDs, and you technically could then archive that new record at a later time and then actually do the merge in the archive database if you wanted to go to that route. So that's, but if they give and they've been archived out, it's likely just going to create that new giver for them. And that way they would just get, statements and so on off the new giver.
Kimberly, you had a question?
I do. Archiving isn't ideal for us because we don't want to reuse giving unit codes. So we just inactivate them on the giving unit. But how can I use the filter function in the address record to show only my current records?
I'll go ahead and take that. So for one, if you archive, it shouldn't actually regenerate giving unit codes. Are you letting the system just kind of automatically create codes and keep those, or are you assigning your own codes?
No, we assign the codes.
Okay.
I did try to do an archive and it pulled those numbers and it showed up in my active list again, like my active or available unit codes.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, if you archive, it's definitely going to move them out. Okay. So that makes sense. So your second question, which I think really kind of tracks for everybody, archiving is a good option. And the analogy is sort of like, if you had a physical file cabinet with files, archiving is taking those out and shoving them in sort of a storage box that you'd have to, go to a different room to access. CDM Plus kind of inherently will filter the various record structures, which you had asked about. And so one option there is to use things like marking individuals do not print or giving units as inactive. And those will prevent those records kind of from showing by default. And you can customize. So to answer your question on address records, if you go into your address records and click on configure, you can choose what that filter is and put any advanced find you want in there. So if current records mean they're in certain mailing codes or certain groups or whatnot, you can set up your filter to say, just exclude those people that are outside those groups.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. If you get stuck, just reach out to support and they'll be happy to walk you through it.
Okay, great.
I'm going to answer this one to everybody because there's a few things for that. So the question is, there's a giving unit attached to an address record, but there is another address record that has all of the data. How do I move the giving unit to the new address record? When you're on the giving unit record and you look at it, if you click change to the right where their address, like the name and address is, there's a button. Yeah, that would be great if you could pull that up, Julianne. There's a button that says select address. And this is the same for individual records as well. When you click that button, it's going to come up and you can search for the address record that you want to connect it to and just click it. It will take all of the information on that giving unit record and move it to the new address record for you. It's a great tool to use. And I had the question earlier too, if you have somebody that gets married and you need that one individual moved to the newer address record, you do the same thing. The process is the same. You just hit select address, tell it which one you want it to go to. It'll take it and now connect it to the new address record.
And then once that's done, you can go to the former address record, which will now be empty, and delete it. Lots and lots of great questions.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you all for coming here today. Again, feel free to reach out to our support team or our sales team with any questions that you may have. So if you have a specific question about how to manage your specific database, support@cdmplus.com. We can connect you with one of our support technicians and they can walk you through those specific steps. Again, if you have any questions about the different features you saw today, or if you're not seeing a feature, reach out to our sales team. They can definitely go through our options with you. And then a couple ways just to kind of follow us online is both through Facebook, through Twitter or X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Definitely a great way to see all the different highlights and go from there. But thank you all for joining us today. Have a great rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.